Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So it's been a long day. So we come to the last session of today. Today we have Kun Napol Ratchatasumrit from CTO from Edsy AI tutor platform that help Thai students to improve their English skill through personalized interactive learning experience. So let me get start on this. On October 16, Perplexity roll out an interactive language learning features on iOS and on the website. And on the same day, Duolingo stock trade down 3% on the same day and hit intraday roll near $320. It isn't the causation. It does show how fast AI players can join the learning market. Today, Dr. Napol will help share his lesson learned and experience in this space. So, hi, Napol. Nice to meet you again. It's been a while since our last discussion in Texas in August this year. Pleasure to have you today. Would you please give us an introduction and give a bit background of yourself and what you do at SC?
For sure. Thanks, Kun. So my name is Napol. I'm a co-founder and CTO at Edsy. At Edsy, we build AI English tutor for school. So the problem we try to solve is that Thai students spend a lot of time in English classes, but most of them still cannot communicate well. So the issue that we found is the lack of practice, right? Because in regular schools, there would be one teacher per 40 students. And Edsy want to fix that problem by creating this personalized learning tutor with AI that lets students practice and get feedback at scale. So before Edsy, I did my PhD in computer science with the focus on AI in education at Carnegie Mellon University. My PhD research focused mainly focused on building simulated learners and interpretable knowledge tracing models. And before that, I spent some time at Microsoft as an engineer.
Thank you for your background. So let's get into it. As you mentioned about like your background as a researcher PhD student, uh, could you give us a bit like what's your playbook that you turning your research right on the like meaningful models into the product at SC? Could you give us a more like context about this?
Yeah, for sure. So in my thesis, I work mainly on the interpretable knowledge tracing models, and that's hence the term meaningful models. And I think the core of my thesis on the interpretability for my research is that it's non-negotiable, especially in the high-stake domain like education, right? So we have that as a core principle at Etsy, where we only use system that can explain to teacher and students, and we don't want to use a system that kind of like a black box that you can just put things in, get things out, and no explanation at all. So I think like in academic, like you have to um, balance between these things pretty well. You still want to get the explainability and interpretability, but you still want to consider the trade-off with the scaling of the business as well.
Yeah, on the interpretabilities, right? Not sure whether you could like provide us some like examples of the interpretable components in speaking and reading for the education sector that Etsy have done so far.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said before, it's the core principle of our company. So we kind of consider that in every single places that we do. But to show you an example, I'll use grading as an example, right? So grading or assessment is a core part of education. And then you guys probably can see a lot of models or systems that do grading, like essay grading or things like that nowadays. And there's a lot of black box models that do that, right? They would just get the essay and they can output the grade out, or like maybe some feedback. And then even sometimes you can have a tool that just kind of put this essay to LLMs, and hopefully they kind of throw back the grades for you, and you can do like prompt fine tuning or whatever. But in our case, like those systems actually like a black box, right? Because you never understand why you get that grade or like what you can do with that grade, right? And that's why interpretability comes in. So in our case, we would consult with a lot of experts on the English expert in this case, right? On the criteria of when you grade student essay or grade students conversation, what are you looking for and what kind of rubric that you have? And then we would develop each models for those kind of different criteria that we have to try to extract different, to learn those criteria separately. And then we meaningfully aggregating them later. So then in that case, we can explain to the students or teachers when they get a certain grade, we can tell them this is the reason that you get this grade. And this is how can you improve it. Right? In contrast to a black box model that you just get a grade, but you cannot explain anything with that. So I think that's not good for education.
Understood. I think the example is pretty clear. Actually, I think when you mentioned about the gradings, right, and come with the AIs, definitely would also related to the accuracy. So I would like to understand a bit more on how you design or decide on the trade-off between accuracies and the ability to explain the logics behind that. How would you trade off between this, where you can get some improvement in terms of the accuracy, but it will hurt in terms of the explainabilities? How would you consider on this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think there are two sides to this question. First thing, I think interpretability is actually non-negotiable. So it's the core component of what make learning happens, right? An example I had before, you can get a perfect grading system, but if you cannot explain it, then there's no learning for students. But then you need to be able to interpret that score so them to get the meaningful feedback and then can improve on the learning. So I don't think it's about just the accuracy at all, but the interpretability has to be there. Otherwise, there's no learning. On the other side, when we talk about the accuracy, right? The question is what does it actually mean for a student when the accuracy dips 1 or 2% on the grading system, right? In AI, we focus a lot on benchmark and all this accuracy, all these metrics and incremental improvements of these. You have a new system that say, oh, I'm 3% better than the state-of-the-art system. But when you in the business, right, you have to consider what does that actually mean for the real users? When you have a 2% better grading system, does that mean anything for the users, or it doesn't help anything, right? So in my opinion, it's actually arbitrary. You say a 2% better system, it doesn't actually help student at all. So when you compare to interpretation or explanation, that actually improves a lot more in terms of student learning. So I think it's not really comparable.
Yeah, I think it's very insightful from your perspective on this. Let's continue on the deployment that Edsy have done in Bangkok with across over 3,000 students so far, and it showed that the score uplift for around 6%, right? Would like to understand a bit more on the deployment in terms of what AI capabilities that really impact on this improvement, and could you also share on how you prove the values to I would say the enterprise schools or municipalities beyond the test score? What are the other value that you show to them to prove in terms of the values?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at the end of the day, and this is not just for us, right? But I think it's true for any edtech system. Score are just a measure of learning outcomes, and that should be the main metric for any learning system or educational technology. How well students can learn from the system, or in our case, how well students can communicate after they learn with our system. So I think that's the core metrics, and that's the values that we try to measure. So the score is just a measure. And then in this case, we just showed as a score that, okay, when you use our system, your student can communicate better. And it's a great value for these schools because it's not something that they can do before, right? I talk about in the beginning, most schools, they have a ratio of 40-1 teacher per student. And it's just not possible for the teacher to get these students a conversational practice with the feedback. right? And then, but with the technology and AI system, it's actually possible. So I think we provide like infinite values to them because this is not something that is possible before. And obviously, it's a holistic effort, like, and all the components has to work together to help students learn. But if I have to pick one AI capability, I would say it's the ability to personalize for each student, right? So it's important because there's a theory in learning science called zone proximal development, where it says like you can only learn when you learn something that's not too easy or not too hard. If it's too easy, you don't learn anything. But if it's too hard, then you don't have the effort to learn it because it's too hard. So because like the AI can figure out like what you know, and they kind of suggest stuff that in the zone of proximal development for each student, then students can learn the best when they get into that level or into that zone, which is probably not possible when you just have like a teacher who teach like 40 students, try to like keep track of each student like level.
Yeah, I think that's point on the personalization is very interesting. So let's continue on. Would like to go deeper into in these areas. Probably like on the personalization part, where you like play on the technical components, right? Could you share a bit more about like the high level technical components of Edsy, where you can like use the mechanism to provide like a feedback loop, which is like personalized for providing the like personalization for or interaction with the user. How SC structures the high level in terms of the technical architectures on this.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a very unique thing for us as well because okay, to begin with, we are B2B business, right? So we sell to school and not like directly to students. So that's a component of like you want to personalize, but you still have to follow the lesson plan that the teachers have for their students. So it's not like, oh, you can personalize everything and give you like a different learning path because teachers are like that. They want every student to go like to follow the same learning lesson or lesson plans or whatnot. But unlike other systems, like we don't have like a strictly pre-designed lessons. So our lesson is very flexible. We always work with school, like take their learning plan, and then we kind of design the curriculum and lessons according to kind of match with the learning plan that they have. And then because the lesson is flexible, it's usually kind of come with like maybe a question or some skills that students want to learn with that lessons, right? And then the actual journey that each student would kind of go through is very unique. It depends on the current level of the students because they keep using our system. We keep track of everything. We build a student profile of that particular student, so we know like what kind of vocab you learned before, what are the skill level that you are, and then we use that information with the current answer that they have. So we have like a pre-answer, kind of like a pre-test where they can answer the question before they start learning, and we take those, right, and when we combine them to provide like a unique journey for them. For example, like we don't just suggest like any vocabs to learn, but we look at like what is the answer, and we try to see like what is the better like word choice from the answer that they have, and we suggest them to learn that. And then we of course they also have like a fixed vocab that teachers want to teach, and we kind of combine them with that, right? So it's a combination of the two. But I think that's how we kind of like mix between this, like, oh, you have the lesson plans, but you have also like each student is on a different pace, and we try to combine that in a very I think it's a creative way to combine this.
Understood. And when you touch upon like the vocabulary and like English also like related to the fluencies, right? How do you like prevent the feedback that probably like could be like over correct for the student, and this could be something that trade off that this could kill the fluency for the student. How do you prevent that kind of feedback when in your solution?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So this is definitely a real problems, right? And it's kind of getting to that sort of proximal development that I talked about before. Like if the student is still not fluent enough, it actually bad when you try to like suggest like very complicated, like complex words for them to learn, or like ask them to like speak perfectly like a native speakers. So, but when students are really good, maybe that's what they want. They want to practice like a native speakers, and they want to use like a more complex vocabulary. So in this case, like our system is kind of fit well in that regard because we keep track of everything you learn in the system. We know where you are in your learning journey. And so we have different threshold for different level of the students. Like if the student is still like at the begin as a beginner, we kind of have like a lower threshold so they don't have to spend too much time and they learn just enough to get to the next level. But once you become like more expert, then we try to like, increase the threshold and make sure that you learn better in that sense as well. So yeah, I think that's a perfect thing to use the system like this. So to prevent all this like overcorrects or like the fluency stuff.
Yeah. And so far I see that Edsy have already like deployed and scale across over like 300 schools, right? Any like lesson learned or like the challenge in terms of the technical aspect or any challenge on the business side that you find during the scaling phase or deployment phase, and how did you fix those challenge and overcome them?
Right. So let's start with the technical side. Right. So obviously, when you want to have a system like this to deploy with like a bunch of users, the scaling is always a problem, right? Like for example, like to prepare for the big launch with 140 school with the Bangkok city this semester, we ran through many load tests and we found many issues to fix, right? For example, like there's some database scaling issues, models latency, or container startup time, right? And sometimes the issue is on the school side. Like they have old devices or they have unstable internet connection. And we kind of have to take care of all those, right? And these are not new problems. We know how to deal with it, right? It just takes time and then be very careful and how to fix each thing. And it's actually great opportunities for us to run into this problem, right? So we know that we want to optimize the system and it become useful for all the users. However, we also want a balance between like what needs to be done at what time, right? Like we don't want to premature optimize all the system, right? Because we are a startup, so we cannot just like on day one we try to optimize everything. So I think it's a balance issue between like, okay, now we want to scale to this level, now we have to do this and make the system very lean and optimized. On the business side, I think because we are B2B and we customize for each school, like I talked before, like we get the lesson plan and we customize for them. That part actually becomes a real bottleneck when we kind of want to deal with like 200-300 schools, right? Because you're a startup and our academic team is very small, and to deal with that is becomes like a problem. So of course, before we have used AI throughout this kind of like content generation for sure. But for this year, because we have to scale to even more schools, and we don't want to expand our team too much, so we actually use even more AI, and we build like internal system using agentic system, right? To kind of like feedback and do all this with the content generation. So again, when we talk about content generation, it's still all curated, right? We do content gen with AI, but we never use it directly. We generate the content. And then our academic team still has to go through like to curate all the content and to read through everything. So, but again, it's kind of get rid of the generation process. They only have to do evaluation, right? So that increase the speed a lot. And then we kind of keep increasing like the capability of our content generation system to do even more tasks and then better like using this agentic system and all this like new technology.
Yeah, and you when you mentioned about the content, right? This lead me to the other question around the cultures and localization. I believe that is the critical part for your success in Thailand. Could you like share on how you adapt the SCAI tutoring system into the local cultural context? How do you address the cultural issues with the SC?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So it's been 2 years since we started Edsy, right? And we regularly talk to our users and teachers and students to get feedback like all the time, and we keep improving our system. So there's so many issues. Right? I'll tell you like maybe one example. So for example, like Thai teachers, we all know they have a lot on their plate. They have to do documents, they have to like teach many classes, they have to like do the gradings, and they also have to like help out with all the stuff in the school. So one thing that we learned pretty fast when we start talking with this teacher in school is that we cannot add extra works for these like teachers. Like if you ask teachers to like adjust their lesson plans or like kind of like try to figure out how to use our system with their lesson plans, that become a problem because that extra works, right? And then require like a lot of changes. And so what we have to do is actually we have to seamlessly fit in the lesson plan that they have. And so we have to adapt our system to be able to support different use cases that they want to use. If they want to use this in the class, we have to support that. If they want to use this as an extra class, like a sound lab or something, we have to support that. If they want to use this as a homework, then we have to support that, right? And then we have to adapt to the lesson plan. So it's not like, oh, they have to adapt to us, but we have to take their lesson plan and adapt our system to them. So that's the key component that when you want to sell to Thai schools, that's like a real thing that you have to go through. Right? And it will be different in different countries, right? And then on the technical side, there are also different expectations for each culture. For example, like in the pronunciation practice, for Thai students, it maybe some groups that want to have like a native speaker level pronunciation, right? But for most people, what they want is that they want to be able to communicate in English. So there's a concept called English as a lingua franca, and that's like a way that you can use English to communicate. So when you have all these pronunciation grading models that most people use, like maybe it's developed from the US, right? And usually this system, they basically like compare the pronunciation with the native samples that they have. And that becomes problematic sometimes, right? Because if that's not the goal, that we want to sound like a native, and or maybe it shouldn't be the goal to begin with. What should be the way to adapt to that? So that's like what we do. Like we work with Professor Chulalongkorn to kind of do some research on this in the linguistic department, and then because we have a lot of system that students use in our system, we take those and kind of fine tune the models that we have to kind of follow those kind of expectation that each school has.
Yeah, I think we got the insight from the cultural localization. So let's continue to let's like in terms of the outlook for the AI powered applications, right? Let's look forward, like look toward the like 3 years ahead from now. Do you like foresee any like potential breakthrough technologies that would like really like change the into like a new generation of personalized learning?
Yeah, that's another interesting question. So in my opinion, I think with the current technologies, we actually have a great technologies now, right? Like with the AI capabilities, that it will get better. But I think the real bottleneck to get to the next level of personalized learning, maybe it's not about the AI models or technologies like that. But I think the real breakthrough is about the computationalized learning. What I mean by that is like when you want to build the personalized learning with like an automated system like AI or whatnot, you have to understand the learning from the computational aspects. Meaning it has to be in the level that computer can understand, right? So it's not like you can just get the lesson plans or like curriculum that human teachers use and just feed that to AI, and then it will figure out like how to like do all these like fancy personalized stuff. It can if you just want to use like LLMs, but to me, it's just going to be random and then hallucination, and you can just not understand everything because we want it to be interpretable. You need a way to turn that lesson plans or like curriculum and basically change it into a format that is computer understandable, or what I call computationalized learning, right? You have to computationalize all those subjects into like, oh, these are the skills, exact skill that you have to learn. These are the examples of those skills. These are the problems attached to those skills. And once you have that, I believe like with the current technologies, we can build like a very strong personalized learning system. But it's just like that very hard step of like trying to convert all those knowledge that we have into like a computer understandable format, which that is very hard. So yeah, I think that's like what blocked us for now.
Okay. And any like hype that you think it will fade away? Because right now everyone's talking about like LMs, AIs in the education. Do you foresee any trend that would fade away?
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot of trust in LLMs nowadays. People seem to believe that you can just throw things to LLMs and it's magically do some thinking and learning and understanding behind the scene, and then output something that's useful, right? So for example, you see a lot of personalized system where they basically just put the things to LLMs with like a fancy system prompt, and then hopefully you get something back to be useful like for students, even like grading or even feedback or whatnot, which true at some level, but I don't think that's actually like good for learning. I think that for the educational technology, people will start to realize that that's not the way to go. And what you need is like more structured, more scaffolding, more curriculum based that you curated very well. And then you can still use LLM for sure, but it has to be used as a tool to help with the system, like kind of like what we use LLM for, but not just like use LLM directly for the learning like a lot of people use today. I hope that hype will kind of start dying down and people will start thinking about learning from the real learning perspective.
Yeah. And based on what I heard from you so far, it seems like you are transforming the whole education industry, helping organizations like the school and the government to really understand how the AI and technology can help change and shift the way that students will learn in that ecosystem. Right? Would like to understand on how the way forward for Edsy in terms of the roadmap or what we can expect to see in the year forward. Could you share on this as well? So what we can see in the next few years from now?
For sure. Of course, there's many plans that we have ahead. But one thing that we are really excited about is what I just talked about is the computationalize the learning of the English learning, right? So if you think about English learning today, people just kind of like do a task-based or scenario-based learning. You learn about weather, you learn about career, but there's no way to like keep track of what exactly you need to know to be good at English, right? People just kind of think about it like you keep using it and you will be good at English. But for us, we don't believe that. We believe that there is a way to think about English learning in a framework that's more structured and more computationalized. And we are working on that right now, like using the data that we have, like data in the past 2 years. I think we actually have a lot of data to start looking into this in a more scientific way, and then try to like build out this framework. So in the next version, we hope that because of this framework and pedagogy framework, we're gonna be able to like teach English in a more structured and then more personalized way and kind of optimize the learning even better.
Wow. Thank you so much for all the insights, all the lessons learned that you have shared today. Really look forward to the outcome and new experience, the personalized experience with Edsy AI tutors for the student in Thailand and hopefully in other countries as well, as I believe you would also like try to scale your solution, your product across the borders. Thank you so much for the insight today.
Right. Thank you, Poon. Great conversation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.